The galaxy had forgotten what fear felt like. For centuries, the Council reigned, a cluster of powerful alien species who governed the stars with rigid control and blood-stained diplomacy. The old wars were over. Order had been forged. And in the forgotten corners of dusty archives, whispers of a primitive race called humans were just that. Whispers. Myths. Ancient problems buried beneath political convenience. But when the Vexar came, those sleek, silver-skinned predators with their mirrored eyes and bone-clad armor, the Council didn't know what to do. They came like storms, tearing colonies apart, silencing dissent, and spitting in the face of diplomacy. The Council tried peace first, then threats, then desperation. Nothing worked. The Vexar didn't want territory. They didn't want resources. They wanted dominance, humiliation, to remind every race beneath them what real power looked like. They turned once mighty species into sniveling loyalists. They paraded broken delegates through council halls like trophies. Torture was televised. Executions became ritual. But the Council still clung to one last relic of hope. Project Bastion. A sealed vault on the edge of known space. A military cryo facility buried deep under black ice on the moon of Vorta 7. Inside slept the last of Earth's warriors, humans, forgotten, archived, stored like weapons too dangerous to be used, locked away after Earth's last war, a war so brutal that even victory had tasted like defeat. The Council feared humans once, feared their rage, feared their unpredictability, feared what they were willing to do to win. So they froze them, and the galaxy moved on. Until now. I was there the day the vote was held. Only 6 of us voted to awaken them. Only 3 left the chamber alive. I remember the way High Chancellor Dravak's voice shook as he whispered it. If we wake them, we will not be able to control them. That was the point. When we arrived at Vorta 7, the facility's AI still functioned. A relic of old Earth tech, it greeted us in English, cold, efficient, still hostile. We gave authorization codes, ancient, encrypted, and half-remembered from digital ruins. It asked one question before opening the cryopods. Is humanity at war again? We didn't answer. It opened the chambers anyway. They didn't look like much, those first men. Pale, shivering, muscle atrophied, minds foggy. But their eyes told the story. And when the lead one stood, taller than the others, scarred down the side of his face, with that dead calm you only find in killers, he didn't ask where he was. He asked who needed to die. His name wasn't on any council registry. The human military files were mostly corrupted. All we had was a designation, Commander Holt. But in that moment, names didn't matter. What mattered was that they were awake, and the galaxy was about to remember what fear tasted like. Within a week, the Vexar intercepted a long-range transmission, distorted Earth dialect, buried in static, but one phrase rang through. Requesting recon on enemy fleet. Engage only if provoked. The Vexar, being who they were, provoked. They expected an outdated ship. Maybe a clumsy human attempt at diplomacy. What they got was a stealth cruiser with ancient Earth weapons, magnetic rail cannons, plasma shredders, and something darker, tactics designed not to win, but to annihilate. They didn't just kill the Vexar patrol. They erased them. No bodies, no ship parts. Just a burning message carved into the hull of a drifting asteroid. We're awake now. The Council panicked. Some demanded humans be put back into cryo immediately. Others begged to arm them, to use them like trained wolves on a leash. But Holt didn't wait for permission. The humans moved like a shadow, coordinated, quiet, and angry. And for the first time in decades, the Vexar stopped broadcasting their victories. They stopped parading their captives. They started pulling back their forces. Whatever they saw in those first human encounters, it shook them. And yet, the real war hadn't even begun. Because humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were coming for blood. The first confirmed footage of human retaliation spread like a virus across black market interstellar networks. No official broadcasts, no press statements, just shaky camera drones clinging to life as they recorded what happened on Calderon 3, a Vexar outpost once thought untouchable. The Vexar had built that station as a symbol, obsidian spires clawing at the stars, torture balconies, and plasma-lit walls lined with council banners torn in half. They never expected visitors, not armed ones, not human ones. But Holt had studied the outpost before the cryofrost had even melted from his boots. Calderon 3 was where the Vexar broke the Orek diplomats. 5 days of public executions. They'd ripped the Orek ambassador's voice box out and used it to make music. The council sent 3 pleas for mercy. The Vexar replied with a video of his skull, polished and mounted to a chair. So no, Holt didn't want prisoners. The operation was called Black Echo. No fanfare, no glory, just a surgical insertion, a quiet exfil, and the promise of total erasure. The human stealth cruiser, designation Hades 12, entered the Calderon sector under silent warp. No signal beacons, no electronic footprint, just void. The crew was small. 11 soldiers, including Holt. Most of them still hadn't shaken the cryo headaches or the frostbite scars, but their minds were clear. These were the kind of men who trained for years just to kill for a living, then were cryogenically frozen to wait for the kind of war bad enough to need them. Now it was here. Holt stood in the drop bay as the hangar doors opened, his armor black with no insignia. He didn't need a flag on his shoulder. The enemy already knew who was coming. "Rules of engagement?" asked Sergeant Kinn, the youngest of the squad but already dead-eyed from too many losses Earthside. Holt didn't flinch. "Same as always, no survivors, no broadcasts, no witnesses." They touched down on Calderon 3 like shadows, silent, precise, efficient. The outer guards didn't even get a chance to scream. Suppressed weapons stitched through their chest plates before their AI implants could process the threat. One by one, the soldiers moved through the complex like ghosts. No door codes, no alarms. Holt had already decrypted the layout 2 days ago. Human minds didn't need nanotech when they had instinct and a long, slow-burning rage. They found the Vexar commander in the control tower. He was tall, even for their kind, silver armor flaring at the shoulders, his face marked with those ceremonial cuts they called victory lines. He didn't plead, but he did ask one thing. "Why are your kind awake?" Holt stared at him for a moment. No movement, no blinking, just that slow, eerie calm, the kind that comes after too many funerals and too many missions that never got declassified. Then he replied, "Because you made the mistake of thinking peace made us weak." The commander was dead before the last syllable dropped. Holt didn't kill him with a bullet. He used a combat knife made of tempered earth steel. He wanted it personal, slow. They left no trace, no bodies, no buildings, just a crater where Calderon 3 used to be. Back on Vorta 7, I watched the feed go dark. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't like them. I was one of the 6 counselors who had voted to wake them. My name is Ren, half-blood Elaithi, scholar, diplomat, politician. I'd lived my whole life thinking logic could solve everything. That power meant control. But watching humans operate, watching Holt, I understood something new. Power was about resolve, and humans had more of it than any species we'd ever known. When Holt returned, he didn't land at the council, didn't want a ceremony, didn't want medals. He walked into the cold war room on Vorta 7 and dropped a single data crystal onto the table. It projected a simple message across the holoscreen. Calderon 3 has been neutralized. Target 2? The other council members squirmed. Chancellor Dravak turned pale. One of the Surkari delegates outright collapsed. They had expected something more reasonable. Orders, supervision, strategy. What they got was a predator. I spoke first. Commander Holt, I said, standing straight, careful with every syllable. The council hasn't authorized further. He cut me off. You didn't wake us for diplomacy. You woke us because you were losing. If you want us to stop, put us back to sleep and deal with extinction yourselves. The room went silent. He leaned in, that scar along his cheek twisting slightly with his jaw. You're either with us, or in our way. I believed him. 3 weeks later, 5 more Vexar colonies fell. Holt wasn't building an army. He didn't need one. He had a handful of men, all ex-special forces from Earth's last war. And he had something better than firepower. Fear. Word spread fast. The Vexar tried to send reinforcements to their border systems. They arrived to find entire stations gone. No distress signals, no survivors, no black boxes. The other alien races began whispering in back rooms, behind closed doors. Some were terrified. Others, relieved. Because behind all the posturing, all the politics and false diplomacy, the galaxy had been waiting for someone to hit back. The Council didn't make an official statement. They couldn't. To acknowledge the humans was to admit weakness. To support them publicly was political suicide. But unofficially, they kept sending targets, and Holt kept erasing them. I asked to meet him alone. I wanted to understand, not just how they fought, but why they were so good at it, why it came so naturally, why it seemed like war was in their bones. He agreed. We met in the observation chamber overlooking the Vorta Ridge, jagged black ice cliffs under starlight. Holt stood with his hands behind his back, staring into the abyss like it was a friend he'd missed. "You're wondering if we enjoy this," he said, voice low. I didn't deny it. He nodded slowly. "You all look at us like monsters. But we didn't make ourselves this way. We became what the galaxy needed us to be. Earth didn't survive because we were the smartest or the most advanced. We survived because when someone kicked down our door, we made sure they never walked away from it." He turned to me then. Cold eyes, flat tone, no emotion. "You froze us. You locked us away because you couldn't understand us. But you woke us up because now you finally do." I swallowed hard. "And when the Vexar are gone?" I asked. "What happens next?" Holt shrugged. "That depends. Are there still threats out there?" "There always are. Then we'll keep hunting." I realized, in that moment, the truth. The humans weren't coming back to join the galaxy. They were awake now, and the war hadn't ended. It had just begun. Meanwhile, in the Vexar capital system, panic was spreading. Entire communication lines went dark. Border scouts deserted. The Vexar High Dominus issued a direct challenge, a bounty for any captured human, dead or alive. They didn't know, they didn't understand that you don't put a price on ghosts. One bounty hunter tried. A half-cybernetic mercenary named Jarl Voss. He intercepted a squad of humans on a recon mission near the Draco Rift, brought a warship, EMP nets, neurostun mines, everything. None of it mattered. They found his ship 2 days later. The engines were still running. His crew was missing. And someone had carved the words into the hull with a plasma torch. Still not listening. Back on Vorta 7, the Council was fracturing. Some members wanted to seize human tech, replicate it, control them. Others wanted to bury them again, fearing they'd turn on us next. Dravak tried to organize a recall order. Holt never even responded. He just kept moving. One by one, the Vexar outposts fell. Not in full-scale battles, in surgical disappearances, gone without a trace. Holt's team had developed new tactics, psychological warfare, weaponized fear. They'd leak rumors before hitting a target, play audio clips of dead Vexar commanders, send cryptic messages to Council spy drones. Are you watching? You should be watching. The Vexar stopped sleeping. They started killing their own officers out of paranoia. Whole fleets abandoned posts just to flee deeper into uncharted space. And still, the humans came. I watched all of it from the shadows. A part of me wanted to stop it, to put the lid back on the box. But the rest of me, the part that had watched my friends tortured on Vexar streams, the part that had seen children's bones stacked in council gardens as warnings, that part watched with satisfaction. We thought humanity was our last resort. What we hadn't realized was, they were the galaxy's punishment. And the sentence wasn't over yet. The galactic map looked different now. Where once there were clean borders, shimmering light paths marking trade routes and power zones, there were now blank spaces, empty sectors, and silent stars. Holt and his team didn't just destroy the Vexar's control, they destroyed their influence, their confidence, and most of all, their sense of superiority. Entire races that had bent the knee to the Vexar for decades were pulling back their ambassadors, refusing tribute, and arming quietly, encouraged by the unspoken message. The apex predator of the galaxy wasn't silver-skinned or born in nebulae. It was human, and it was back. But with every mission Holt executed, with every system that went dark under their campaign, a new question kept rising in council chambers, and it wasn't about the Vexar anymore. What happens when the humans run out of enemies? The next strike was different, bigger, riskier. Target, Krillian 9. A Vexar stronghold turned experimental command center, rumored to be housing over 100,000 enslaved non-Vexar species, forced into tech labor, genetic research, and weapons testing. Holt chose it deliberately, not because it was strategic, but because it was monstrous. The Vexar had been splicing DNA, testing hybrid soldiers. It wasn't just torture. They were trying to create something worse than humans, something obedient, something controllable, a weapon to counter the very ghosts now hunting them. The irony was poetic, and Holt didn't appreciate irony. Intel confirms the main complex is buried 5 kilometers below the surface, said Kin, reading from a portable holo sheet in the dim war room. Anti-air batteries here, here, and here. No orbital defense platforms. They're not expecting a full drop. They will, Holt said, scanning the terrain hologram. They've seen the pattern. They're adjusting. They know we're coming? They're praying we are. The team was bigger now. 33 operatives, all unfrozen, trained, and ready. Earth's finest. War-hardened men with names erased from history, rebuilt in cryolabs under cities that no longer existed. No medals, no flags. No ranks outside the unit. They had one symbol, a faded skull etched into black armor right over the heart, and they had one order, passed down by Holt like scripture. No prisoners, no broadcasts, no survivors. Krillian 9 wasn't just an attack, it was a message. The Council had no idea how to respond. Some of them begged Holt to delay the mission, to allow them time for diplomacy, to spare the enslaved labor forces. Holt refused. "I'm not here to clean up your politics," he said flatly. "I'm here to finish what you were too civilized to start." He meant it, because the truth was the humans weren't just killing Vexar now. They were rewriting the rules of war, turning what used to be political threats into blunt consequences. The assault on Krillian 9 was a ballet of destruction. Human dropships pierced the atmosphere at subsonic speeds, cloaked under electromagnetic scramblers. The ground defenses lit up too late. Railgun turrets blew apart before their operators could finish screaming. Inside the underground complex, panic spread. Slave workers ran in every direction. Vexar officers shouted half-formed orders. Experimental weapons were left in their cradles, untested and useless. The humans didn't stop to ask questions. They hit the main reactor, severed the comms tower, and stormed through biolabs lined with twisted bodies, failed hybrids, sewn together from species that were never meant to share a spine. Holt walked through that corridor like a ghost in hell. He didn't flinch. He found the lead scientist, half mechanical, all arrogance, trying to escape through a secure crawl tube. Holt dragged him out by the throat, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You wanted to create something worse than us? Now you get to watch it happen." Then he crushed his windpipe and left the corpse in the lab. They didn't take a single piece of intel, not one sample, not one survivor. They burned it all. The video spread through the underground faster than any official news feed. A smuggled clip, grainy and violent, showed a human squad clearing a hallway with brutal efficiency. Flashbang, breach, controlled burst fire. Vexar bodies dropped in threes, no hesitation, no mercy. Someone had overlaid the footage with an old Earth phrase from their war propaganda. "You can run, you can hide, but we don't stop." Suddenly, the other alien races started making calls. Races that had been neutral for centuries. Species once subservient to the Council. Some asked for alliances, others offered weapons. A few just wanted to stay out of the line of fire. But one did more than that. One betrayed. The Yarn Coalition had always played both sides, spindly, multi-eyed creatures with hive intellect and flexible loyalties. They'd submitted to the Vexar when the Council collapsed, sold Council secrets for protection, and now, seeing the Vexar bleed, they tried to save themselves the only way they knew how. By trading. They reached out to the Council, to Chancellor Drevak directly, promised locations, movements, and codes to the human encryption grid. "They're unstable," the Yarn diplomat hissed over secure channels. "They'll turn on you next. You know this. We know this. Help us stop them, and we'll help rebuild your seat at the top." Drevak hesitated. He was a coward, not a fool. He knew the humans were dangerous, but he also knew betrayal wasn't free. So he stalled. He recorded the message, and he sent it, secretly, to Holt. What happened next would become legend. Holt didn't respond for 3 days. No messages, no return signals, just silence. Then, all at once, every Yarn communications satellite blinked off. Their power grids died. Their orbiting defense drones fell out of the sky like meteors. The humans didn't even land. They didn't need to. They deployed something the Council hadn't seen before: atmospheric conversion drones, old Earth tech, still experimental when the cryo chambers were sealed. These drones targeted oxygen mixtures, electromagnetic fields, and basic life support conditions on planetary levels. In short, they turned the air into poison. The Yarn screamed for help, begged the Council, threatened to reveal everything if they weren't saved. No one answered. 3 billion Yarn died in 48 hours. When the last signal from their capital faded, a single message appeared across the galactic emergency band. Just 4 words. "We heard you talking." The effect was nuclear. The Vexar knew the tide had turned. They pulled back from half their systems. Leaders started abandoning colonies. Commanders defected. There were whispers that even the High Dominus was preparing an evacuation. But the humans didn't slow down. If anything, they accelerated. They weren't after victory. They were after witnesses. They wanted the galaxy to watch, to understand, and to remember. And yet something was shifting in Holt. I saw it during our next meeting. We were in a makeshift command tent on an abandoned Vexar mining station. His armor was scratched, his eyes darker, his voice lower. "What happens when you win?" I asked him, genuinely curious. "When the Vexar are gone? When there's no one left to punish?" He didn't answer right away. Then he looked at me. Not with anger, not even with coldness, just exhaustion. Deep, marrow-deep fatigue. "We don't win," he said quietly. "We just survive longer than the people who don't deserve to. You could stop. We could stop. Let the council try diplomacy again." He shook his head slowly. "You don't fix a cancer by talking to it." I realized then that Holt wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't even a leader anymore. He was a consequence. A walking answer to every mistake the galaxy had made while humans slept. And his patience was running out. I returned to the council shortly after. They begged me for updates, for control, for leverage. They still didn't get it. You don't control the storm. You just pray it passes without tearing your world apart. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of silence. Not enemy silence, not tactical withdrawal. Human silence. Holt's command team had just returned from a successful operation in the Outer Drift, where they destroyed 3 Vexar supply chains and melted a weapons testing site deep under the crust of a red dwarf moon. The mission had been perfect, clean, fast, untraceable. But when Holt stepped into the debrief room, Kin wasn't there. Sergeant Kin, the youngest, the most loyal, the one who never flinched. Gone. At first, Holt said nothing. No orders, no questions. He simply stared at Kin's empty seat, then turned away. The others followed his silence like it was gospel, but I knew something had shifted. And I wasn't the only one. The galaxy was catching its breath. The Vexar were still retreating, but slower now. They were reinforcing their core systems, digging in behind fortified sectors like animals wounded too many times. Their offensive tactics were gone. But so was their panic. They'd figured it out. The humans were splintering. It started small, a recorded transmission intercepted by a civilian scavenger crew floating through the ruins of Station V-19. It was human, encrypted but sloppily. The voice was unmistakable. Kin. "Not what we were made for, not this. This isn't justice, it's extinction." The message was short, fragmented, cut off midway through. But it was enough. Enough to tell the galaxy what Holt had been hiding. Not all humans agreed with the war anymore. By the time Holt called a war room meeting, the tension had already spread through the cryo-revived squads. They weren't like normal soldiers. These men had fought Earth's last war, a war that left oceans burning and cities in dust. They weren't bound by honor or rank. They followed Holt because they believed in him. Or at least they used to. Now, they were whispering in corners, asking questions. How far does this go? What happens when there's no one left to fight? Are we becoming what we hated? Holt stood at the center of the room, looking over his team like a surgeon inspecting a patient he already knew was dying. "I won't justify anything," he said. "No greeting, no soft opening, just steel. I don't need to. We were woken for one reason, to end the enemy. That hasn't changed." He paced slowly. "You're tired, I get it. But tired men don't stop wars. They die in them." He stopped in front of a squad leader, Vance, broad, older, with shrapnel in his cheek and one synthetic eye. "You disagree, Vance?" Vance didn't flinch. "Kin's right," he said. "We didn't sign up to wipe out species. Krillian 9 was a slaughter, not a battle. Some of us—" "Some of you want to negotiate?" Holt interrupted, voice rising. "Want to hand peace treaties to the people who gutted our kind and watched the galaxy laugh?" He looked around. "Let me make something clear. This isn't Earth. This isn't politics. This is the edge of the universe, and no one's coming to save us if we blink." But something in his voice cracked. Just for a moment. A pause. A hesitation. And Vance saw it. So did I. That night, I walked into Holt's private quarters. He rarely slept. Mostly sat at the observation window, staring into starfields like they held secrets he hadn't decoded yet. "Kin's alive," I said quietly. He didn't respond. He's with civilians on an exo-mining colony. I got the ping an hour ago." Still silence. "You could reach out." "No," Holt said. "You could explain?" "No." "Then what?" I asked. "You gonna send someone to silence him? Burn another moon just to prove a point?" He turned slowly. No armor, just black fatigues and old scars. He looked tired. More than tired. He looked broken. "They're forgetting," he said. "Forgetting what they did to us, what they did to our people, to our planet." I nodded. "They are. But some of your men are starting to forget why they fight." Holt looked away. "They don't need to remember why. They just need to finish it." "No," I said. "That's how monsters are made." The Vexar used the moment. They broadcast a public transmission, first in centuries. It wasn't propaganda. It wasn't threats. It was a message to Holt. From the High Dominus himself. The screen lit up in council chambers, in pirate ships, in scavenger dens, even across the battered ruins of old Earth satellites still orbiting Jupiter. The High Dominus sat on his throne of bones, armor cracked from age. "You have proven your savagery," he said. "You have won your battles, but now your own blood rejects you. You are not soldiers. You are war itself, and war, Commander Holt, cannot survive without conflict." He leaned forward. "You will eat yourselves before you ever reach us." And for the first time in the war, Holt didn't respond. Kin's faction grew. It wasn't mutiny, not yet. Just a choice. Men stepping away from Holt's commands, refusing operations, taking supply ships and vanishing into independent sectors. One of them even hijacked a Vexar slave ship and released the prisoners. No executions, no fire, no war. They left a message behind. This is not what humanity is. The galaxy saw it, and for the first time, some species started calling them the other humans, the fractured branch, the rebels. Even the council began to whisper, "Maybe we back the wrong ones." And then came the breaking point, Station Brimwall, one of the last major Vexar communication hubs. No defenses, no guards, nothing but scientists and technicians too old or too broken to serve in combat. The perfect easy kill. Holt ordered its destruction. Vance and the splinter squads refused. "We'll disable it," they said. "We'll dismantle it, but we won't kill unarmed techs." Holt gave them one last chance. They walked away. The next morning, Brimwall burned. Holt took in a fresh squad, untested. And he didn't just level the station, he broadcast the screams, "Lev," across every council and BlackNet channel. "This is what compliance looks like," he said. "This is the price of submission. You want peace? Then bury your leaders and call me when you're ready to listen." I confronted him after. I didn't ask permission. I walked into his command center, slammed the comms control panel, and said what no one else had the spine to say. "You're not saving humanity anymore. You're replacing it." He didn't yell, didn't argue. Just turned away and whispered, "Then maybe that's what humanity always was." The split became official. Kin's forces rebranded as the Second Line, a separate human contingent, not allied with Holt, not allied with the Council, operating on their own code, rescue, recovery, resistance. They didn't burn, they rebuilt. They didn't execute. They evacuated, and slowly, they gained support, not just from humans, but from aliens. Even former Vexar victims began feeding them intel. The Vexar were dying. But so was Holt's cause. Now the galaxy watches two types of humans, the ones who punish and the ones who heal. And no one knows who will finish the war first. But everyone knows. The final battle won't be between humans and aliens anymore. It will be human versus human. And only one version of humanity will survive. War was no longer about the Vexar. Not really. They still existed. tucked away in shrinking pockets of fortified systems, clinging to what little power they had left. Their fleets still flew, but slower, more cautious. Their commanders still barked orders, but now with a stutter. They had learned fear. But it wasn't Holt who terrified them anymore. It was the idea of Holt, the broadcasts, the burned stations. The silence that followed every strike, the way planets vanished from sensors without a scream. Holt had become myth, and myths couldn't be reasoned with. But kin? Kin became something else entirely. The second line moved like surgeons. They didn't destroy. They dismantled. Their ships arrived without announcement, escorted evacuees from refugee colonies, and left before sensors could lock on. They were ghosts, but not the same kind Holt bred. They weren't there to haunt. They were there to heal. In a sector Holt had once left littered with orbital ash, kin rebuilt a comms relay from Council debris. It transmitted humanitarian signals across 5 dead systems. No threats, no ultimatums, just one message, playing on a loop in over 60 languages. We are not vengeance. We are still human. And for the first time, the galaxy believed it. Inside the human fleet, the fracture deepened. Vance had officially defected. So did 30 others. Holt didn't chase them. He didn't punish their families. He didn't speak of them again. He simply stopped naming his squads. They were just numbers now. Unit 9, Unit 14, Unit 21. No more brotherhood, no more belief. Just execution orders and confirmed kills. Some men followed him blindly still. Others out of fear. A few out of raw hatred. But no one believed they were saving anything anymore, not even themselves. And Holt? He wasn't even pretending. I tried to reach kin through back channels, old tech, manual relays not linked to any council grid. It took weeks, bribes, and a near execution when one of Holt's black ops teams intercepted my signal. But it finally reached him. He agreed to meet. Neutral ground. A ruined satellite outpost in the dead zone between Sector 9 and the Helix Divide. No engines, no weapons, just air and gravity. I arrived first. Kin came late. I didn't recognize him at first. The boyish eyes were gone. Replaced by steel, not bitterness, resolve. The kind Holt used to wear before the war became his religion. "You look older," I said. "So do you," Kin replied. "I guess war ages everyone eventually." We sat across from each other. No guards, no weapons, just pressure suits and recycled air between us. "You shouldn't have reached out," he said. "You're the only one left who hasn't lost himself." He didn't answer. "I've been trying to stop Holt," I continued, "but I think we both know he can't be stopped. Then he has to be replaced." Kin didn't blink when he said it, didn't hesitate. "He's not the future," Kin added. "He's a scar. A deep one, yes. But it has to heal. If we let him define humanity's legacy, we might as well bury ourselves with the Vexar." "But how?" I asked. "He controls the Black Fleet, the cryo-armory, the heavy cruisers. You've got, what? Converted medics and a few engineers?" He leaned in. "I've got something he doesn't," he whispered. "Hope? No, willingness to lose." That shut me up. Kin continued. "Holt's obsessed with control. Total war. Perfect victory. But that's not how this ends. I'm willing to bleed for a version of humanity that doesn't need fear to survive. That's why I'll win." He left me with coordinates. "Come see it," he said. 2 days later, I did. It wasn't a fortress or a battle station. It was a colony, built in the wreckage of an old Vexar labor camp, reclaimed, recycled, clean air, crops, shelter. Families, human and alien, living side by side. Children laughing in dirt-covered boots. A market powered by jury-rigged solar panels. A hospital staffed by ex-soldiers and ex-slaves. It felt like Earth again, before the last war, before the cryo-freezes, before the treaties and the betrayals, it felt human. And that scared me more than Holt's fleet ever could. Because it meant this war wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about identity. Holt found out. Of course he did. He always found out. His recon drones spotted the colony 3 weeks later. Silent surveillance, no strikes, no warnings, just quiet eyes in the sky, watching. The footage made it to his command room. I was there when he reviewed it. He didn't blink, he didn't speak, he just stared. Children, civilians, some of them former enemies, now living under the flag of Kin's second line. "This is what they're building," I said. "It's not weakness. It's a future." Holt stood, slow, quiet, and then he said something I never expected. "That's not a future." He turned to me. "That's a distraction. A soft lie before the next blade comes down. You think peace lasts? Look at history. Look at every treaty, every ceasefire. We build cities. They build bombs. We open hands. They sharpen claws." I shook my head. "You're wrong. And somewhere in you, I think you know it." He paused. "Maybe. But I know this. If I let it grow, it'll be my men buried beneath it." And then came the order. He didn't scream it. He just said it. "Prepare an orbital strike. 2 hours." I did the only thing I could. I ran. Stole a scout pod. Punched in Kin's coordinates. Sent a warning. The signal was jammed. Not by Holt, by someone inside the second line. They knew Holt would come eventually, and they were ready. By the time I reached the colony, the sky was red with warning lights. Kin was already mobilizing, not to fight, but to evacuate. Families loaded into dropships. Medics packed essentials. There were no weapons, no shields. "This wasn't meant to last," Kin told me. "We just needed to show the galaxy it was possible." "You can't let him destroy this." "I'm not." He handed me a small drive. "What is this?" "A copy of every blueprint, every speech, every face, every birth, every survivor, every name that made this real. Get it to anyone who'll listen. If we burn remembered." I wanted to argue, to beg him to fight, but he didn't want to fight. He wanted a choice. Holt's fleet arrived 10 minutes later. 6 cruisers, 1 dreadnought. No hail, no dialogue, just silence. And then the sky lit up. But something went wrong. The orbital strike never landed. Systems jammed, power cut. Holt stared at the console as his screens went black. Then a single transmission came through. "You taught us fear, Holt, but Kin taught us how to disable you." It wasn't Kin. It was Vance, broadcasting from inside Holt's own dreadnought, having sabotaged the weapons array. "You wanted to be a myth. Congratulations. Now you're just a ghost." The standoff was complete. Holt couldn't strike. Kin wouldn't run. 2 versions of humanity, standing face to face across a battlefield made of stars, and somewhere in between, the galaxy watched, waiting to see which one they would follow. The sky was quiet for a long time after the dreadnought went dark. No missiles, no lasers, no screams, just waiting. Like the galaxy itself was holding its breath, watching to see if Holt, the monster they feared, was capable of hesitation. He didn't speak when the weapons failed, didn't shout, didn't flinch. He stood at the center of the command bridge of Reckoner, eyes locked on the blank targeting screen, while dozens of officers waited for his next move. Someone whispered, "What now, Commander?" The word commander sounded hollow, because Holt wasn't that anymore. Not really. He was something worse. Or maybe something less. Vance's sabotage had spread through the fleet like a virus. Half of the dreadnought's systems were offline. Reactor overrides locked. Long-range comms scrambled. 4 strike ships docked early, their crews mutinied. Not a single shot had been fired, But Holt's war machine had already started breaking apart from the inside, and the colony below? Still standing, still shining, still breathing. The place Kin had built in the ashes of Holt's old battlefield was still alive, and Holt hated that. Not because it was weakness, but because it reminded him of something he'd buried a long time ago. I should have spaced him the second he started asking questions, Holt muttered, his voice low, gravel-hard. He didn't say Vance's name, but everyone on the bridge knew who he meant. He turned to the console tech. "Can you reset the system, manually?" The man swallowed. "Not unless you purge the ship's memory core. That would wipe our targeting data, fuel maps, communications." "Then do it." "Sir, with all due respect, if we do that, we'll be flying blind." "I said do it." But the tech didn't move. No one did. And that's when Holt realized. They weren't his men anymore, not fully, not even mostly. Back on the surface, Kin stood beside the landing pad, watching the dreadnought in orbit flicker like a dying god. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He waited. He knew Holt, knew how deep the stubbornness ran, knew how badly the man wanted the world to stay broken, because fixing it would mean accepting what he'd become. I stood beside Kin. We both knew this was it. Not a battlefield. A reckoning. Holt didn't return to the command deck. He went below, into the cryo core. Past the humming ice chambers and the sealed vaults where a dozen more sleeping soldiers waited in suspension. Untouched. Unawakened. Men just like him. Time bombs with heartbeat triggers. He stood in front of one chamber for a long time. Numbered C0019. The man inside was stocky, gray in the beard, faded tattoo on his neck. Only victory. Holt used to look up to him, used to think he'd be the one to lead them out of the ashes. He was one of the first to die. Friendly fire. Earthside. Never reported. Never confirmed. No glory. No name. Just one more lesson. Only victory. Holt punched the cryo chamber's control panel. Nothing happened. The system was locked out, sabotaged. Even his dead couldn't follow him now. Back on the command bridge, a private comm channel blinked open, encrypted, direct, from Kin. It took Holt a full minute to accept it. He stepped into the captain's quarters, sealed the doors, and activated the link. Kin's face appeared, war-worn, quiet, but not afraid. "I didn't expect you to answer," Kin said. "I didn't expect you to still be alive," Holt replied. A silence followed. Not hostile, just familiar. Like two sides of the same ruined coin recognizing each other in the mirror. "You're losing them," Kin said finally. "I only needed them to finish the job." "There is no job left. There's always a job left. You think peace lasts forever? You think they'll stop when you show them kindness?" "I don't know," Kin said honestly, "but I'm willing to find out." Holt didn't respond. Kin leaned closer. "I didn't do this because I wanted to betray you," he said. "I did it because someone had to remind us what we were before all this started. Before the cryo, before the council, before the damn war. We weren't born killers, Holt. We were just men. Men who fought because we had no other choice. Now we do." Another pause. Kin's voice dropped. "You can come down, you know. See it for yourself. No guards, no tricks, just people, just life." Holt stared at him, then ended the transmission. But he didn't give the order to fire. He didn't give any order. He just sat in the dark. For the first time since he walked out of that cryo chamber, Holt didn't know what to do, and that terrified him more than the war ever had. 20 hours passed. No movement, no broadcasts. Then, suddenly, Holt vanished, left his dreadnought, No escort, no alert. Just a stolen scout pod and a signal burst aimed directly at Kin's colony. They tracked the ship down 15 minutes before it hit the atmosphere. No weapons, just Holt inside. Alone. I was on the landing pad when he arrived. I expected steel, anger, fire. But he came out wearing only his standard fatigue. No armor, no insignia, no weapon. The air seemed to bend around him, like the planet didn't know whether to fear him or not. Kin met him there. The two stared at each other for what felt like a lifetime. Then Kin extended a hand. I meant it, no tricks, just people. Holt didn't take the hand. He just said, "Show me." They walked the colony together. No speeches, no crowds. Holt moved through the refugee zones, past rebuilt generators and growing greenhouses, under rusting steel frames now holding schools and food lines. A child waved at him. He didn't wave back. But he looked. That was enough. Later they sat on a hill, overlooking the colony lights. Kin said nothing. Holt finally spoke. "You think this will last?" Kin shrugged. "No, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth trying. They'll come back, you know. The Vexar, or someone worse. They always come back. I'm counting on it. And then what? Then we fight. But not because we have to hate them first. We fight to protect this." Kin gestured to the lights below. "That's the difference. You wanted war to end pain. I want peace to give people something to lose." Holt nodded slowly, then stood, and walked away. He didn't go back to the dreadnought. He sent one message before disappearing into the hills. "To me," it said, "I don't know who I am without the war, but maybe that's not your problem anymore." Command of the fleet passed to Kin within days. The dreadnoughts returned to orbit, silent. The cryopods were sealed for good. And Holt? No one knows. Some say he still wanders backwater planets, looking for a reason to be more than a weapon. Some say he died in the woods outside Kin's colony, buried without a name or service. But those who really knew him? They know he wouldn't go quietly, because Holt wasn't built to fade. He was built to break everything until something better rose from the rubble. And maybe that's exactly what he did. Peace felt wrong, not because it was fragile, but because it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that came after a storm, when everyone walked carefully through the debris, afraid to breathe too loudly, afraid the wind might hear them and start howling again. Kin felt that silence every time he looked at the sky. It had been 6 months since Holt vanished, 6 months since the dreadnought Reckoner returned to orbit under Kin's command, since the cryochambers were shut down, since the black armored squads finally removed their insignias and put their weapons into storage crates they prayed never to open again. And still, Kin didn't sleep. He walked the colony walls at night, the same walls Holt once ordered reduced to ash, and watched the stars for movement. Not because he feared Vexar retaliation, but because he feared something worse, a ghost coming back for what it left behind. The galaxy had changed again. Without Holt, the Black Fleet no longer moved like a storm. They moved like a nation. Under Kin, the fleet was reorganized. Dreadnoughts turned into carriers for supplies. Strike ships were stripped of warheads and fitted with scanning arrays and reconstruction drones. Outposts that once served as execution grounds were now relief stations. People, real people, were starting to believe again. Aliens Kin had once fought were now sending envoys, trade requests, desperate offers for aid. His name began appearing on peace treaties. And the Council? They hated every second of it. The High Council had not fallen, but it had fractured. Half the seats were empty now, vacated or assassinated during the Vexar uprising. Chancellor Dravak was still there, but barely. He held power the way a corpse holds warmth, with desperation, not presence. I sat beside him now, in the ruins of the old chamber, rebuilt only halfway, surrounded by silence and regret. "He won," I said softly, reading over a report from Kin's latest colony restoration. "You know that, don't you?" Dravak looked at me like I'd kicked a dog. "He turned on his own. He abandoned the war. He ended it." "No," Dravak snapped, standing up. "He paused it. That's all. You think the Vexar are gone? You think the border pirates, the fringe syndicates, the exiled factions, you think they won't test him?" I looked up. "They already have, and he's still standing." Dravak turned to the shattered council crest behind him, its edges melted from an old Vexar bombing. He stared at it like it still mattered. "We should have never woken them," he whispered. "Any of them. Holt, Kin, doesn't matter. They're not part of this galaxy. They're reminders of a time we were better off forgetting." "That's the difference between you and them," I said. "They remember, and they act. You just sit here and rewrite history." He didn't respond. He didn't have to. The council was already dead. It just hadn't been buried yet. Kin's colony, now known as New Bastion, was growing. What started as a refugee settlement was now a political capital, not official, not recognized, but real. More real than the council's cold monuments and broken marble. Kin didn't name himself anything, not chancellor, not commander, not king, but people followed him anyway, because he didn't lead from above. He walked the mud with the engineers, hauled parts with the scavengers, bled with the medics, and still, even in peace, his soldiers never deactivated the motion sensors on the walls, because peace was just a lull. Not an ending. It happened on a cold morning. The scanners picked up a ship approaching from the drift belt. Not Vexar, not Council. Human. Not flagged under the second line. Not broadcasting anything at all. Stealth tech. Black paint. Engine signature. Familiar. Very familiar. Kin stood at the top of the landing zone as it broke through the clouds. I stood beside him, breath caught in my throat. It wasn't Holt, but it was one of his old squad. Unit 9, a man named Lorian Pike. Tall, scarred, with that dead look all of Holt's originals wore like a second skin. He stepped out without raising his hands, no weapon drawn. Kin walked to meet him. "I thought you were dead," Kin said. Pike looked up. "We were, until something made us crawl out of the grave." Kin didn't blink. "What do you want?" Pike didn't smile, didn't scowl, just spoke flatly. "To deliver a message." Kin's hand hovered near his sidearm. "From who?" Pike looked straight into his eyes. "Holt." Back in the command center, the message played in full. It wasn't a live transmission. It was a recording, encrypted, untraceable. Holt's voice was rougher now, slower, tired but clear. "If you're hearing this, then I've been watching. I've seen what you've built, Kin. I won't lie. I didn't think you could hold it together. I figured you'd drown in your own mercy. But you didn't. And that's why I'm calling. Something's coming. Not Vexar, not pirates, not Council. Something older." He paused, and for the first time, he sounded afraid. "It's a seed I left behind. Something I thought I could bury. But I was wrong. They called it Project Sovereign." The room went cold. Kin stared at the screen like it had punched him. I recognized the name, too. Vaguely. It was mentioned once in a redacted file from Earth's final war. A failed experiment, a protocol that never made it out of the vaults. "They're waking up," Holt continued. "Cryopods I never authorized. Units not trained, not sane, not ready. The Council built them after we went under. Their own version of us. No soul, no control, just objectives. Kill, erase, repeat. Now they're loose. And they're not coming for the Vexar. They're coming for you." The message ended. Silence returned. Except now it had teeth. Kin stood there for a long time. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, he looked at Pike. "Where is he?" Pike didn't hesitate. "Nowhere you can reach." "Then what's your role in this?" "I'm not here to join you, and I'm not here to bring him back." "Then why come at all?" Pike stepped forward, and for the first time, something cracked in his voice. "He saved me once, even if I didn't deserve it. Now I'm doing the same." He looked at Kin. "Project Sovereign isn't a myth. It's a kill program, and it's already active. Holt tried to destroy it, got most of it, but not all." Kin narrowed his eyes. "How long do we have?" Pike didn't answer. Later that night, Kin stood alone in the observation tower, looking up at the stars. I joined him. "You believe him?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I believe Holt doesn't bluff." "What will you do?" He sighed. "I'll warn the others. Start rebuilding defenses, mobilize, not as conquerors, but as guardians." He looked down at his open palm. "I spent so long proving we didn't have to be soldiers anymore, and now you're forced to be one again." Kin nodded. "But this time, I'm not fighting to win." He looked at me. "I'm fighting to keep something alive." The new war hadn't started yet, but we could feel it. In the stars, in the ground, in the silence. The war to end the Vexar had united humanity. The war to survive Holt's legacy had divided it. But this next war? It would be the one that decided whether humanity deserved a future at all. Because Project Sovereign wasn't just a weapon. It was what humanity could have become. And now it was loose. The first sign of Project Sovereign wasn't ships or weapons. It was the disappearance of stars. One by one, deep space observation hubs began reporting signal blackouts. Entire constellations went dark, not from planetary alignment, not from dust or drift, but from interference. Something was blotting them out. And then came the ghost signals, fractured emergency transmissions filled with screaming, static, and whispers that repeated one word over and over. "Protocol 19 complete. Protocol 19 complete. Protocol 19 complete." Some thought it was an error. Kin knew better. Holt's warning hadn't come in time to stop the activation. It had only bought them days, maybe less. The first strike hit Delta Strain, a neutral alien colony that had refused to take sides during the war. The Sovereign units didn't invade. They appeared. No heat signatures, no warp trails, no engine bursts, just shapes. Matte black humanoid forms that stepped through thin atmosphere like shadows made real. They didn't speak. They didn't threaten. They simply executed. Every life form on Delta Strain was wiped in 6 minutes. Not just killed, erased. Biometric traces, DNA, memory cores, all gone. By the time Kin's recon ship arrived, there wasn't even heat left in the bones. Only a symbol burned into the rock with plasma. O Omega. The last letter of the old Earth alphabet. The symbol used for finality. Extinction. Back in New Bastion, Kin stood over the holomap, watching the black zone spread outward like a cancer. "I counted 12 units, Vance said, scanning the data. "Each one acts independently. No communication, no overlap." "Like a hive without a queen," Kin muttered. "That doesn't stop moving when the head's cut off." "They're not random either," Vance added. "They're moving toward council-aligned colonies." Kin's jaw tightened. "They're not just killing. They're cleansing, erasing anything that reminds them of the old galaxy." "And we're next," Vance said. Kin didn't answer. He didn't need to. I found Kin later that night. He was in the abandoned hangar, staring at one of the decommissioned war pods, a relic from the days when Holt commanded fear like a god. "You still think we can survive this?" I asked him. He didn't look at me. "No." A long pause. But maybe survival isn't the point anymore. What is? He turned to me. Proof. Of what? That we were better than the things that made us. 3 days later, Kin gathered what remained of the second line, Vance's defectors, former Holt loyalists, and even a few alien volunteers, the bravest among species once terrified by the sound of Earth's name. They came not for glory, not even for hope, but because Kin told them the truth. We're not the most powerful species, not the smartest, not the fastest. We don't have fleets like the Council or legacy like the Vexar, but we have one thing they never understood. Each other. And I'd rather die with people who believe in something than survive in a galaxy that forgot what belief even means. They didn't cheer. They just nodded and started loading the ships. The battle was not strategic. You don't plan against extinction. You just fight. Sovereign had already taken 7 outer systems and left nothing behind. No survivors, no resistance, no reason. Only one pod had been recovered. An old scout team had intercepted it mid-strike. The thing inside wasn't human, not anymore. Just the shell of a man. Black exo-armor fused into pale, stretched flesh, a mouth sewn shut, and a HUD built directly into the skull. It didn't speak. It didn't scream. Even when they cut it open, it smiled. The first confrontation happened near the debris field of the old Vexar homeworld. Sovereign Unit Theta-6 emerged through folded space, without a ship, standing alone in the void. Kin's fleet surrounded it. 3 dreadnoughts, 7 cruisers, hundreds of fighters. It didn't flinch, didn't power weapons, just raised one arm, and the entire formation lost power for 9 seconds. In those 9 seconds, 4 ships exploded from the inside. No external fire, no visible weapon, just death. When the lights came back on, Unit Theta-6 was gone. Kin watched the footage in silence. They're not like us, he said. Not like anything. They were built from us, I said. No, he whispered. They were built from our fear. And in that moment, I saw something change in him. Not rage, not panic, just understanding. Kin's final plan was as desperate as it was suicidal. He knew the Sovereign units were drawn to data hubs, old Earth encryption, Council archives, anything that held records of the world before. So he made New Bastion the biggest signal beacon in the sector. He turned the colony into bait. And then he waited. They came at dawn. Not ships, just them, walking across the sky as if gravity bent to their will. 12 units, each wearing the black of Holt's dead army, but warped, twisted, faces blank, hands fused with weapons that didn't need ammo. Kin stood at the gate. No armor, no weapons, just a voice. You were made to erase us, but we already did that to ourselves. What's left now isn't legacy, it's choice. They didn't stop, didn't listen. One raised an arm, and that's when Holt stepped from the shadows. No one expected it, not even Kin. He was thinner now, rougher, hair longer, a scar running down his neck like someone had tried to cut out his voice, and failed. He walked between Kin and the Sovereign units without looking back, and they froze, like statues, recognizing their maker. Stand down, he said. They didn't move. He stepped closer. I ended your war. You don't get to start a new one. Still silence. Then one of them, Unit Alpha, tilted its head and spoke. Your command protocol is obsolete. Your authority expired. Your death is pending. Holt smiled. Just barely. You want a war? He said, and pulled a detonator from his sleeve. Then die with your purpose. The blast lit the sky for minutes, a chain reaction set off by old Earth tech Holt had embedded into the planet's crust, failsafes he never told anyone about. The Sovereign units didn't scream, They didn't fight back. They just disappeared in the fire. Erased. Like the war they were born from. When the dust cleared, Holt was gone. No body, no signal, just a crater where the past had finally ended. Kin stood at its edge, staring into the smoke. I joined him. "Do you think he planned this all along?" I asked. Kin nodded slowly. He knew they'd come. Knew we wouldn't survive without a hammer to drop. "He was the hammer." "No," Kin said. "He was the man who built it, then let it go." Weeks passed, then months. No more sovereign units appeared. No Vexar retaliation, no pirate incursions, no council interference. The stars stopped disappearing. Peace returned. But this time, it stayed. New Bastion became a capital, officially recognized by dozens of species. Kin was asked to lead. He refused titles. He just called himself custodian. He said, "We're not rulers, we're keepers of the lesson." And the lesson was carved in stone at the center of the colony, above the crater where Holt made his final stand. It read, "We were feared because of what we could do. We are remembered for what we chose not to." Humanity didn't win the galaxy. It earned it, not with fire, not with blood, but by facing what it almost became and choosing something better.